So today we're going to go through some of the writing, and I've got summaries of each slide. Bobbie will be there. Then we're going to go into creating a book dummy, because you're all at that point now where your manuscripts are being edited, you're moving things forward. So I want to talk about creating a book dummy. Welcome back, Bobbie Hinman. And just as a quick note, Bobbie is a former elementary teacher. She has 13 grandkids, multi-award winning book series with 28 picture book awards to the credit for that series. And she did write this book, How to Create a Successful Children's Picture Book. She is also a professional editor, and I am glad to call her my friend. She is a phenomenal resource, and we are so grateful to have you here again today. Thank you, Bobbie.
I started out publishing traditionally, not children's books, but before the children's books, I wrote 7 cookbooks, and they were traditionally published. And I worked very hard to supplement the marketing, because the publisher, who was a division of Random House, started out like gangbusters. He just had me all over the place, and he was marketing like crazy. But then, do you know what happens? He has another book coming out, so he's off promoting the other book. So I still had to do a lot of marketing. And this was before the internet was really the way it advanced the way it is today, and Amazon was just someplace where you went to occasionally to buy a book. So I didn't have that, and a lot of the marketing that I did was on the road, speaking engagements, etc. Anyway, when it came time to do the children's books, I said, I did so much work for just a small percentage when the books were traditionally published, because at the time, I don't know what it is today, the royalty was 8 to 10% of the retail price of the book. And that's nothing, because the publisher got the rest of it. So I said, this time I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to do it ourselves, because without my husband, I couldn't have done all of this. So I started listing the pluses and the minuses. There are some positives for the traditional publishing. Very often you will get an advance. Now, that doesn't mean you get a gift. That doesn't mean they write you a check and that's yours. That's an advance against the royalties. So that's deducted from your next royalty payment. But at least it's something to show that they believe in you, and they do work harder because they believe in you. So the advance was good. The publisher assisted with the marketing, and they stored the books. And that's a big issue if you are selling a lot of books. We had 5 books at the same time, 5 children's books, and we were ordering 5,000 books at a time for each one. So that was a lot of books to store. So that cost us quite a bit of money. A publisher takes care of all of that. One of the things that I like is that you don't have to collect a shoebox full of rejection letters. And it's very difficult to get a book traditionally published these days. Most publishers don't want to hear anything from the author. You have to get a literary agent first. So you have to sell yourself to the literary agent. And then if they believe in your book, they will find your publisher. By the time all of this takes place, it could be several years. So that's another disadvantage. Very few people do get contracts. It can take years to produce the book, and you have no control over it. If you give your publisher your book, it's up to the publisher to decide who the characters are. Are they people? Are they ducks or chickens? And if they decide to change the title, change the cover, whatever, they have the right to do all of that. So you have no control at all. I love the fact that I could do it all my way. And I didn't know, really getting into it, how hard it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a breeze, and it wasn't, which is one of the reasons I decided to write this book, to let you know that there is a path. I made a lot of mistakes that you don't have to make. But you do need to do the marketing, and you do need to pay for storage, and costs can run high, but there usually are ways to cut the costs. And working with April is amazing, because she has so many contacts when it comes to illustrators and graphic designers that you can get much better value for your money than I did. So those are the basic pluses and minuses: the cost, the storage, the amount of work involved, the time that it takes. I edited a really cute set of 3 books, a series for somebody about 2.5 years ago. and a big publisher picked them up, and they still haven't come out. I think they're on the spring list, but they say, okay, we have a slot 2 years from now for that spring market. That's when your book will come out. You just have nothing to do but sit and wait until it happens.
Yeah, I tend to find myself being too much of a control freak. I like to do things my own way.
Yes.
And I want to pick the illustrator, and I want my vision out on. For me, it's not just about writing, but it's about my vision and what I want to produce. And I think that's a lot of it with many of the self-published authors here.
Right. And some people don't care. Some people are willing to say, okay, here, fine, it's published. Let them do whatever they want with it. I'm like you. I want to do it my way. Okay, there are choices today that I didn't have. There's print on demand, and I am just dipping my feet into the print on demand with my paperbacks, which I'm finding kind of interesting. I like the fact that you don't have to lay out any money. You don't have to store books. I don't like the royalty because I'm used to selling the books myself and my profits are much higher, but I love the fact that I don't have the costs. So it's evening out. I'm learning to really like it. Mm-hmm. And I've seen an increase in the quality that Amazon is putting out. I haven't really looked into the other ones, but I'm very happy with the quality. Hybrid publishing is really, in my opinion, not publishing. It's not like traditional publishing. They call themselves publishers. They say, I will publish your book for you. But if you're paying, they're not a traditional publisher. If you are actually paying them to self-publish your book. So you can self-publish it yourself if you want to put the time and effort into it. And I have a very hard time with some of their marketing. They offer 10 free books if you sign up, and we'll promote your book and we'll have it all over the world. From what I've seen, they don't do much more than just put it in some listings. They really don't work for you. You're paying them to self-publish your book.
Right. And I think they have this kind of niche market of people who don't know how to self-publish, nor do they want to self-publish. So they're fine with giving dollars for a package, a publishing package, and feeling like, okay, I'm going to get published. They're going to take care of everything. And then you get a portion of that. And of course, there's many, many different hybrid publishers. There's lots of different things happening. So just beware. If you are a self-publisher or you want to self-publish, but you don't quite know how to do it, my recommendation is look also at getting a coach or a project manager. That's something that I do for other authors that I work with, so that even if they don't have a lot of knowledge about the process, they get the hand holding and we walk through it together, and they're not putting thousands of dollars out there for the stuff that they could do themselves and do together.
And it's true that there really are many different companies. You'd have to really look into each one. But from what I've seen, the cost of your book is going to have to be so high for you to recoup any money that you won't be able to sell it. And I've also seen very poor quality. And when it comes to the paperweight, poor quality, from what I've seen, now there may be better ones out there, but be careful. They're in it to make money. They are in business, but you can get the same or better for your money.
Yeah. And I have had a couple of people come to me, actually quite a few come to me, that have already had their book published by a hybrid publisher. And at some point, the publisher has decided that it's no longer going to be in print and they're going to stop selling it. So I try to help them to get their book back, get their rights back so that they can then publish it themselves. And I see things like the hybrid publisher will have chosen sizes of the book to publish and to create that are not going to apply to print on demand. And I know that they do that on purpose to make it harder for people to take their books away from them and to go do it elsewhere. So I've had to work with folks and get their books converted to a size that they can then use for print on demand, or that they can, go and get their books published. But there's a lot of information, and sometimes they won't give you the source files. So now you've got all these great illustrations and you can't use them, or you can't take the source files and have them tweaked for a new format so that you can publish it on like Ingram Spark or one of those others.
Right, but there's another biggie. Whoever publishes the book owns the ISBN. And if they own the ISBN, you cannot publish your book. They own the rights to it. You would have to change the format, and then you could get another ISBN. So if they're publishing it in paperback form and they own the ISBN for that, you would have to then obtain an ISBN or hardcover or something and do it that way. But it's a struggle.
Yeah.
So make sure you own your ISBN, always, always.
Yeah. So I'm going to move on to the whole idea that I took a screenshot, Bobbie, in one of the pages of your book talking about, who's going to help you do it yourself. It is not self-publishing the way that we think, right?
Right.
All these different people are part of your team that are going to help you moving forward. So building that network and being a part of this group where we can connect you with the right people will help you to be successful with your book as well.
Yes, and I drew that little thing. Isn't it cute?
You did a good job.
I put it together on the computer.
Nice.
Thought it was cute. But yes, it shouldn't be called self-publishing because you really could never do it yourself.
Right. And now we're kind of at the beginning of some of the part 1 of the book where you talk about the idea taking shape and where do ideas come from and kind of the writing tips, Bobbie. It was a huge amount of information. And I think you did a great job on this first part of the book, just kind of helping people understand how to take their concept and turn it into something that can then be published.
And sometimes people will say, but where do you get your ideas? And for those of us who can't sleep at night because our minds are going like this, ideas are everywhere. I do exercises with kids in classrooms where I say, I'm going to write a story about something in this room. What do you see that's telling a story? And they look around and they say, oh, that picture. And we say, yes, look, that's a picture of a monkey. What's he doing? There's a story there. And I was in one classroom where they had a lot of space creatures, and we talked about writing a story about these creatures in this classroom coming alive at night. So wherever you look, there's an idea. And it can be really, really simple. I saw a very cute children's book. I think they're going to call it Bake a Pumpkin Pie. And it's just a little boy and his mother picking pumpkins. It talks about the different types of pumpkins that they see at the pumpkin field and how they cook it and how they mash it and how he makes. That's the whole book. And then there's the recipe at the end. And it's written actually in the voice of a little boy. And it's so adorable and it's so simple. There really are ideas everywhere. I jotted down a couple things this afternoon. I could write a story about my fear of bugs. And I thought, okay, how could we solve that? Well, in a story, we could solve it. Maybe a brave little kid would look at the bug that he fears under a microscope and say, hey, that's kind of cute. Look, he has a little face, he has little eyes, whatever. It would help children overcome their fear of bugs. Simple little thing. But if you think about what you wanted to be when you grow up, there's a story there. If you think about what you loved growing up, there's a story about snow. They're just ideas everywhere. So choose your idea, decide what age group. We were talking about this a little while ago. Decide what age group you want to target. Because if you're writing a book about insects for a 4 to 8 year old, it's a lot different than writing a book about insects for middle school kids. So decide on the age group, go to the library, go to the bookstore, and read as much as you can for that age group. So you know what words they can deal with, you know what subjects they like, and that'll help you write for that age group. So really study it, really study what that group is reading.
And you mentioned, Bobbie, in the past about as an editor, there are, common mistakes that people make. On the right side of this slide here, we have eliminate unnecessary words. And you've got kind of some examples where people typically add more to their story than they need to, certain words that you typically would edit out, right?
I can't see what they are, but I know what they are.
I'll just read it. So every word must count. Don't fall in love with your words. And that's something that Bobbie tells me every time I come up with a new book. And I say, but Bobbie, you cut out something that I really liked. Can we talk about it? And she's like, April, don't fall in love with your words. So in here, we've got a sample, Bobbie, where it says she insisted that she wasn't going.
Okay.
So the word that is
the word that. If you go through your book when it's finished and eliminate the word that and the word would, is that up there?
Yeah, every summer we would go to the beach. So that's another example.
Yes, that's past tense. That's sort of a double past tense. Right. Instead of saying we went to the beach, you're saying we would go to the beach, that take out the woods, take out
Yep.
that. And a lot of times that brings your word count way down. You don't need these extra words. For children, every word counts, and every extra word we need to cut.
Right.
You say as much as you can in as few words as you can. And I'm not saying you can't be descriptive. You can be, but you don't need too many words. The first thing I do when I edit a book is go through and cut whatever I think just doesn't add to the book at all, then delve into the process. I usually just send that back to the author and say, okay, here's where I am now. Are you okay with this? Or is there anything that you're so in love with?
Right. Yeah. And then the last example we had here was we used to do this or that. So they used
Right.
to.
We just say we did.
Another common mistake. So we talked about ideas and, I have an idea and now what? So Bobbie, you've talked about focus groups for kids and kids being a great input for finalizing your story.
Right.
You also warned us a little bit about, not going crazy, getting so many opinions that you have, like, I think my first book, I had like 18 revisions, 5 or 6 editors. It was crazy. It was just crazy. So can you just comment on some of that and how do you take an idea but not get overloaded and overwhelmed and being able to move through that process?
Well, the more opinions you ask, the more opinions you're going to get, especially from adults. So if you believe in your idea and you believe in your editor, you can work it out. You create the draft, give it to your editor, take it from there, however you decide to work, whether you want the editor to write the rest of the story or advise you on how to write the rest of the story. And then the only beta readers I used for my children's book were my kids. When I say my kids, the kids I found in the focus groups. And I found that a group of kids will be so helpful if you promise them ice cream at the end of the session. They will listen and they'll tell you whatever you want. And they really are your best source of feedback. But do lots of research at the bookstores and the libraries. I spent many afternoons at Barnes & Noble drinking coffee and reading children's books because I wanted to check out every detail. What font did I want? What size text did I want? How many words should there be on a page? And I concentrated on the children's picture books because I knew the age group that I was working with was going to be the 4 to 7 or 8 year olds. Then I would come home and think, did they have a dedication page? Well, the next time I would just read dedication pages and see what they were like. And what did the characters look like? Were they all the same race? No, I don't want that. So I'd go back and I'd look. And I was very happy to find that there are more and more books now where all nationalities, I think that's the way they should be. But I checked every single detail and it's free. It's free research. You go to the library, you go to the bookstore and you do it, but just know what you want. It'll be a lot easier as you go along if you've seen what other authors are doing.
And librarians are a wealth of information as well.
Yes. And the books that make it to the bookstores and libraries are usually the traditionally published ones. And so I always thought that they rose to a higher standard. So I wanted to check my book against theirs. I'm finding now that a lot of self-published books are just as good. I mean, we're doing great out there.
Yes, we are.
I've seen the movement really grow in the past 10 years that I've been doing this. So test your idea on children. When you're writing for children, just know that they are creative. They're self-centered. They want to read about themselves. They want to be able to identify with the characters that they read about. If they have nothing in common with your character, they're going to close the book. Mm-hmm. They can't identify with what the character is saying or doing or feeling. They're not interested. You can tap into their emotions. They love things that are funny. They love to giggle. They can turn from laughing to crying in just a second. And they like stories that they can become attached to. They like to fall in love with the characters. They also like stories that have characters they don't like. They enjoy that. It's a way for them to be angry at the characters. Know that they have short attention spans. So tell your story and get out. Don't drag it out. 4 to 8 year olds. I'm talking about picture books. One plot. Tell it, move on. Make your story move. Action from left to right. The pictures, action, left to right, keep on going. If you get stuck in one spot and you're saying too much about something, that's what I like to cut out. If there's no more action, get out. And I mean, they love descriptions. They love illustrations. So it's really important. And that's one of the things to look at when you do your research at the library. There are so many different types of illustrations. Do you want it cartoony? Do you want your book to be very realistic? Do you want the illustrations just black and white drawings? Do you want full color? That's all up to you. There are a lot of choices. And when you work with an illustrator, they'll ask you that. Do you want watercolor? I mean, most of it, almost everything now is done digitally, but you can still get the watercolor effect. Just know what you want. This is a biggie. Question about that today. Not everybody agrees on the age group. Not everybody agrees on the page count. In the days when it was all traditionally published, there were certain set rules. The board book had so many pages, the picture book had so many pages. Well, with independent publishing, people are changing that. It was unheard of to have anything other than a 32-page picture book. But now I see them with 40 pages or 26 pages. It depends on the printing company. Usually they still want them in multiples of 8. But if you're doing it digitally, it can be any number of pages, and it's okay. I had one that I finished editing, and she said, do you realize we have 33 pages? What do we do? Well, for an ebook, I said, we have 33 pages. Fine. It's okay. It doesn't matter now. In general, the board book is up to age 3. I think this says 18 months to 2. I mean, there's so many crossovers, but I'm just saying in general, up to age 3, the board book. And that can have 12 pages. It can have 16 pages. A board book is a very simple book. It's just usually letters of the alphabet or objects, a ball, a block, a book, things like that. One word here and there. There's generally 1 or 2 words on a page, very simple book. The concept book is also for that same age group, but that's when you really start with concepts like counting, but it still can be a board book. Wordless books, you don't see very much of, and very few people are interested in doing them, although I think there's some really wonderful ones out there in the 3 to 7 group where you can tell the entire story by just looking at the pictures. The one that most people are doing is still picture books, the 4 to 7 or 4 to 8-year-old. I still like 32 pages, although I just contradicted that a minute ago. And maximum, very maximum, 1,000 words. More likely 700 or 800. Traditional publishers now are saying 650 in a children's picture book. And that's tough, but it can be done. Then when you go to the picture storybook, that can be 1,000 words. That's like a picture book on steroids. More words, fewer pictures, a little bit more in depth with the story.
And so that's geared for the older 7 to 9-year-old, right?
Right.
I see here at the end of the slide, you've got back to the library to research. So it sounds like every step of the way, continuing to research and
Yes.
incorporating feedback of kids, and will continue to make the book better.
Right. I mean, this is really an education. If you decide you want to be a doctor, you're going to have to go to school. You're going to have to do research. Well, if you just decide I want to be a writer, you have to do that research too. The beauty of it is, like I keep saying, it's free. Just keep researching, keep going back to the library and checking every little detail. I say simple plots, 1 plot per picture book. Read some picture books and see what I'm talking about. See what the plot is. See what happens in the beginning. Mm-hmm. See how it's developed in the middle, and see how it ends. They'll show you how you can do it in your book.
Right.
And be careful about sad topics. You can talk about death. You can talk about divorce. But leave the child with hope at the end. Don't leave them feeling like it's all useless.
So you also talk in the reading, Bobbie, about the role that your book will play, kind of understanding your why and what you're trying to get from the book. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Right. You may have a goal with the book to teach a specific lesson. And so that's a good thing. A lot of times when you're teaching a specific lesson For instance, how to grow a garden on your windowsill. This is a lesson, and you teach that throughout the book. It's a little different than having a plot with a story, a beginning, a middle, and an end, because this is something about planting the seed and watching it grow. In some aspects, it is a little bit like that. But then at the end, I like to help develop a lesson plan or a list of questions to see what they've learned, to make sure that they've learned that lesson. The concept books are usually the easy ones. You're teaching a concept like the alphabet or counting. Most people just want to tell a story. They just have a story in them that they want to get out. Very few at this age group are trying to educate. But with the new STEM emphasis in all schools, starting in elementary school, it's good if you can educate while you tell the story. Then there's the entertainment, which is where my books fall. They have no redeeming value. They are just they're just fun. They don't tell us. They tell a little story. They don't teach a lesson, but they're fun. And there's a place for that too. So there's a place in the world for all of these. It's just what you feel you want to do. And whatever it is, again, go to the library, read them, tell the librarian, I'm working on a book, I'm telling a story about whatever, planting a little garden. What books can I read about this topic?
I love this area where you talk about what is it that's unique about your book? Like, in other words, how are you going to distinguish it from that are out there selling books on the same topic?
Yes. Ask yourself that question. Ask it in the beginning. Ask it while you're working on it. Ask the question at the end. What is unique about my book? When I advertise my book, what can I say about it that will make it stand out? Some of the things that I was able to say was that all of my books have original watercolors, original watercolor art throughout. That's a plus. Lesson plans. If it includes lesson plans, that's a plus. If it includes puzzle pages at the end, that's a plus. If it includes music, mine were CDs, but I would do a QR code or some other high-tech method these days. But if it has a song to go with it, that's a plus. If it has a little plush animal that comes with it, that's another plus. Important ones are, is your story timeless? That's a definite plus. Some stories that were written in 1940 are still popular today. Dr. Seuss books, and there are just some that time hasn't affected. If you're dealing with a very timely topic today, will children understand that 5 years from now? 10 years from now? Do you want your story to be timeless? That's one of the pluses. And another one, does your story appeal to all kids everywhere? Is your story for everyone? That was something I could say about mine because I felt that fairies are timeless. And I made sure in my books that we showed children of all different nationalities. We have a little boy in a wheelchair. I mean, it was really important for me that this is for all children. So think about what there is in your book. If you're just starting, maybe there's something you can add to your book to make it better, to make it unique, to make it stand out in some way.
Right. And then you talk about title being one of the most important things that with regard to a book. What type of advice do you have as we think about titles and we're putting our books together?
Well, the focus group really helped me with this. Of course, mine were easy, and I've used the focus group to help me with ones that I'm editing too. What I do is I make a little list of titles with mine in there and then some others and say, okay, kids, which of these books do you want to read? And some of them are, let's see, would you like to read A Monster Came to My House or A Monster Ate My Goldfish? Now, this is one I made up today, so I only have 2, but usually I have 4 or 5. And that's how I pick a title a lot of times. I put together a lot of ideas and then see, well, the kids love things like one that I was actually working on was A Monster Ate My Clarinet, which they loved. And the other choices I gave them were, a monster in the closet, a monster of this, a monster of that, but they liked the one that was a little bit silly. I would ask them, what do you like better? How about Johnny's New Ball? How about Johnny's Magic Ball? Well, that sounds a little better, doesn't it? Then we came up with the title, and this was one that I was working on. This ball must be magic. And they loved that. So play with your titles. Don't get stuck. It's like loving your words. Don't get stuck with a title. You want something that gives a hint about what the book is about, but you don't have to tell everything. But you do have to make sure that the story fits the title. So don't just throw a cute title up there. It can be a silly, kids like silly titles. The silliest one that I have heard lately is Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus.
Oh, yeah.
But that's silly, and kids love it. And the title alone would make kids buy that book. And the one, the Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day, very long title, which is risky, but it was so long and goofy that the book did extremely well.
Right.
Another thing kids love is alliteration, which means using the same letter over and over and over. So a book using a title using alliteration could be Seven Silly Sneaky Snakes, and they love things like that. So be willing to make it playful and check it out with the kids. They'll tell you.
So it's really interesting. I definitely live and learn with some, I'm not very creative with my titles. And my first book was titled Puppy Pickup Day. And I found people were confused about what did that really mean. So definitely avoiding confusion is one recommendation I would give to others.
And I think the best time to give the title is the very end. If you put your title up there in the beginning, but don't feel like you can't change it. Don't fall in love with it. A lot of times the story will give you the title. There may be just 2 or 3 lines, 2 or 3 words even in a story that you say, oh, okay, that would be a really good title. At the end, you can go through it and look for things like that.
Here's a slide, Bobbie, if you want to kind of talk a little bit about how you would put together a mock-up book. And this is awesome way to be able to see as you turn the pages, is your book a page turner? How does this come together? That's one of the biggest things I learned with my book.
This is my very, very first mock-up book that I did. Very, very first one. I didn't know there was such a thing as a mock-up book. I thought I made this up because I just couldn't picture how this was going to be. And I wanted to know what words were going to fit on each page. And I hadn't even really chosen the illustrator, but I saw this picture online on her website. And that's when I decided I was going to use this illustrator. So I cut out the picture and I put it on here. And I just cut the paper and put words on each page. And this was my mock-up book. But by laying out the words, I was able to see that some of them didn't fit where I thought they would fit. So I was able to rearrange them before the illustrations were done.
Right.
That's really important. So you can see exactly where they're going to be. And if you're going to do 32 pages, what I did was just lay out 32 pages on my dining room table. And I cut out strips of text first. Actual little strips. These are glued on, because I couldn't figure out how to do it on the computer. It was just too big a project. And I just moved my little slips of paper around on all of the pages until I got them where they fit. And I said, oh, okay, there it is. Those are great helps when you start working with the illustrator, because you've got a feel for how the illustrations are going to lay out too.
Yes.
It's a lot of fun. After I did that first dummy book, I took it to a local copy center. And they made me a little spiral one. And so those are my very first books. You don't want to do your illustrations. You can play with it in your dummy book. If after the edit, it will change. So you can wait until it's edited into your dummy book, or you can do it and just know that if there are going to be changes, I'm not going to be married to this one. But it may help you to get a feel for where you want your story to go. There's no set mock-up book rules.
For me, the thing that I found most was as I laid out the text and I cut and paste a bunch of stuff in that I liked, I would get to like the page on the right side, and I, does it make me want to turn the page? Mm-hmm. And sometimes I would be like, well, wait a minute, and the winner is, and then ... Mm-hmm. Now I want to turn the page and see who won. And of course, I hope my character did, but it just made me rethink things, or, just kind of rearrange some of the text I was thinking about. So that to me was helpful. And then The other thing that I used my dummy book for is actually going and reading to children, because you can go to the bookstore and you can kind of give them an opportunity to have that visual look of what you're reading as well. It kind of can help give you a little bit of a sense and give them a sense of where you're going with your book.
And it can help you realize very often that there are too many words in your book when you start laying them out on the pages and realizing, wait, this isn't all going to fit, and it won't really work with the next page, so maybe I really don't need these words. So it's a really good exercise.